Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's great to be back here, and today I want to talk about what I would do before I even consider buying a rental property. Okay, now listen, there are so many courses out there teaching flipping, reselling, there's all these strategies when it comes to rental properties. And if I'm going to be honest here, I feel right now the rental market, we are probably at the worst time in the last 25 years to go into try and do passive income through real estate. And when I say passive, quote unquote, because it's not really passive. I mean, is there anything that's really, really passive? I don't know. I mean, there's a degree to being passive, but being a landlord is not passive at all. So whoever came up with that idea that this is passive income probably wasn't a landlord, if I'm being honest. Probably didn't own rental properties because, they're not really passive. And is there anything that's really 100% passive? Probably not. But there's different degrees to passive income. And I think I've got a better one that I would do, and I'm going to share with you, that I'm doing instead of buying rental properties. Now, the current state of the rental market, this is what it looks like for the majority of the rental market. We're buying at probably close to all-time highs. Now, it is a bit of a seller's market depending on what market you're in, so you might get a bit of a deal, but we're buying at pretty high prices. Interest rates are as high as they've been in the last 20-ish, maybe 25 years. Insurance. Let's talk about insurance, especially if you live on the coast. But you don't even have to live on the coast. If you live in the inland as well, there's some issues there, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But let's talk about insurances on the coast. I've actually had friends that live, in Florida and on the coast, and they've received letters from their insurance company. In fact, effective in 90 days, their insurance rates are doubling. How do you control, you can't control rent for that type of news. So the insurance rates are doubling because they're on the coast or being hit by hurricanes or wildfires or whatever. Insurance companies are pulling out, out of these states. And, there's one or two players in the game and it's not cost effective. And so insurance companies have to make money. So they're passing it on to these guys. And you can't raise rent fast enough to cover these types of things, right? And then for those that live inland, another problem that I'm seeing, I'll just call it out, and whether you agree with me or don't, that's okay. There's a lot of immigration coming in, and it's not all great. Some of you probably would just shut me off after that, but let me explain at least. Listen, we're seeing crime rise. Okay, now is it all because of immigration? No. Not all because of immigration, but we're seeing a lot. People aren't being vetted like they were 20 years ago. Right? And if you live in Canada, I mean, just look at Toronto. Holy cow, it's becoming a place you don't, it's not as safe as it once was. And I don't think that's fair to people that live here. I don't think that's fair at all. But I've seen and I've heard from people that their insurance rates are going up because crime in the neighborhood is going up. Vandalism on houses, break-ins, all that stuff is going up. Well, guess what? Insurance companies aren't going to take a loss, so they pass the buck on to you. Now, maybe they're not doubling insurance rates on the houses, but insurance rates are going up, not down. And it's a problem because depending if you're rent locked, if you live in a place where you can only raise rent 1% a year or 2% a year or whatever, you may not be able to outpace how much it's going to cost you to continue to own that home and try and rent it out and, make that quote unquote passive income. So I think there's a better way. Now, if you bought houses 15, 20 years ago, stay in them. You're probably getting a killer deal. I mean, 15 years ago, 2008, 2010, was the prime time to own houses, especially in the U.S. You could go buy a house in Florida for $20,000. You could go to Arizona for $20,000, $30,000. You could go through many areas, Middle Tennessee, many areas of the U.S., Arkansas, and get houses for, $15,000, $20,000. Which today, if you bought a house for $15K and you're rent in some of these areas $1,000, $1,200, $1,200, $1,500. You bought a house for $15K and you're making $1,000 a month. Yeah, keep the property. That makes sense. But what I want to talk to is all the people today that think buying a rental property is going to be their ticket to freedom, and it's going to be great passive income. I don't think it is, for a few reasons. We've already talked about a few. Interest rates being double, triple what they were just 5, 10, 15, definitely 15 years ago, but even 5 years ago. Now, interest rates are coming down, and that might help a little bit, but they're still super high. The cost of a house. Listen, 15 years ago, again, depending on where this is very generic because it depends on where you live, but middle U.S., a lot of the coast, maybe not California or New York, but a lot of the rest of the U.S., $20,000, $30,000, $100,000. Today, those same homes are $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $1 million to buy, right? So the cost is disproportionate. It's just so much higher. I mean, you have to take on so much more costs to own those homes. So that's another problem as well, right? Is they've gone up so much in just 15 years, right? So the cost to upkeep and do all that stuff is just a lot higher, right? And then we got the insurance, like we talked about there. And then another thing we don't talk about, I literally just saw this today. I was in my community's Facebook group, and someone was complaining about a professional renter. That's right. Professional renters. The headache, if you've ever had one, you know what I'm talking about. And I've worked with a lot of clients that own rental properties, and they have these headaches of professional renters. And if you live in a province or a state, depending on where you live, where they are more pro-leaning to renters than they are to house owners, it's a pain in the ass. In fact, if you live in a state that's pro-leaning towards land or like house owners, it's still a pain in the ass to get them out, right? And so in this case here, in the Facebook group, someone was complaining that they have a professional renter, they haven't paid rent in months, and they are CMP, which is the Canadian, policing, one of the Canadian policing forces, can't do anything. It's like, damn, that sucks. Because if that house is leveraged at any of the math that I'm going to show you today, this person's losing money left, right, and center. And it's just a risk I don't want to take on. There's a way better way to A, to make more money, and B, to have less stress. And this is truly what I would call almost 100% passive income. I mean, it takes about 15 minutes a week. I've been doing this for some of my clients now. I'll show you some examples of that as well. But this is a way better way here. So let me walk you through, guys, kind of like a classic scenario. If you're looking to, like, all the courses, I've seen the courses out there, hey, come into my course for $10,000 and I'll teach you how to be a landlord. I'll teach you how to wholesale. I'll teach you how to flip. I'll teach you how to Airbnb. And although like those things are cool and I like them, I don't think right now people are making a ton of money at it, in my opinion. Now, I could be wrong. You may have found a stellar deal. But for the majority of people, I don't think that's your ticket to cash flow freedom. I think that's your ticket to stress, overwhelm, and even in a perfect scenario, I think it's mediocre. Here's an example. Let's just say you go and buy a home, an average home these days, what, $500,000? Depending on where you live, maybe if you're in Middle Tennessee, you can still get a home for $130,000, $150,000, but the rent's, is just is proportionate to what you're paying, right? So, an example, let's use $500,000 as an example here, because I think most people in more of the bigger markets, California, New York, Chicago, Toronto, almost anywhere in Canada, to be honest. $500,000 is almost a starter home these days. It's not even buying anything significant. Now, if you live in Texas, maybe a little bit different here. But, $500,000, you got to put 20% down. So you've got to go find $100,000, give or take. Let's call it $100,000, meaning you're leveraging $400,000. Okay. At current interest rates, let's just call it, I saw them come down. I think they're 5.63 this month. So let's just call it 5% to round it up here. At current interest rates of 5%, you're looking at, let's just do some quick math here, $20,000 a year. Now, let me just double check I did that right. I'm going to pull up my calculator so those that are watching, you can actually see what I'm doing here. So if you're going to go and buy, let's just say you're going to do a rental property, $500,000, you leverage, you put down 20%, meaning you're going to leverage about $400,000. right? At 5%, that's $20,000 a year, or $1,666 a month. Now maybe you can sell that maybe you can rent that property for $3,000 a month. The spread seems kind of okay, but there's something else we got to do here. That's just your interest payment. We also got to worry about your amortization. So let's just divide this by 30 years. Okay, that's $13,333 a year if you want to have that house paid off. Divide that by 12, you're now 1,100. Let's call it 1,100 bucks. So we're 1,100 plus 1,666. So before you pay anything, you're in 2,700 bucks. Okay, so let's just say you can rent it out for $3,000 a month, which seems really good these days, right? And maybe you got them paying the utilities. Okay, great. You don't have to worry about that. But after your mortgage expenses, $2,777, you've got $223 left over. Wow, that's, I'm being sarcastic. That does not seem like a great deal at all. That is brutal. Right? And you gotta, listen, if you're going to do this properly, you got to set aside maintenance for the house. Maybe we call it 5% of rent, which would be $150 a month. Okay. If you're going to do this well, you probably got a property owner. So probably got a property maintenance company taking care of this. Most property companies I've seen are 10 to 20% of rent. So even at 10%, that's $300. Maybe bring that down to 5%. That's still $150. But no, we're going to do 300 because 10% seems more realistic these days. You really should be setting aside money every month for replacing the renter. So even if we call that $75 a month, plus you got house insurance, which, I don't know, that's going to be depending on where you live. Where I live, that's almost 200, let's call it $180 a month. What else? Property tax, again, where I live, property tax, like $450 a month. It might be even more. If you're down in Texas, you're probably $1,500 a month. Right? So I'm currently negative $932, and I guarantee you there's some things I haven't put in there, and I guarantee I fully didn't fund that house emergency fund well enough. I'm putting $150 a month, right? One fridge repair completely blows that apart, or fridge replacement, right? So right now I'm negative almost $1,000 a month on $400,000 of leverage. $100,000 down, $400,000 of leverage. Ouch! That hurts. That's not fun. I've had friends also do this where they've just paid cash. Again, Middle Tennessee, Middle U.S. You can get a house for $130,000, right? So we went and took $130,000 or $100,000. Let's just use $100,000 as a whole number here. To put down on a house. Pay cash in full for a house, right? $100,000 they've used. Now, maybe you got cash. Maybe you got that in cash. Okay. Maybe you've had to borrow that. Well, if you borrow that again at 5%, that's $5,000 a year. That's actually a lot more doable. It's $416 a month, right? These houses in Middle Tennessee are paying roughly about $1,000, give or take. Some might do a little bit more, but they're usually more expensive too. Right, so if $1,000, you got to take out your interest on your $100K, right? You got property tax down there, which is really cheap. $70 a month covers property tax in Middle Tennessee. Insurance, again, $60-$70 a month usually covers insurance in Middle Tennessee, right? And then what else? You got to be putting money away for tenant replacement. Again, what if you did $50 a month? You got property maintenance at 10%. That's another $100 a month. Okay. Utilities. Maybe you pass it on to the customer. Maybe you don't. Maybe you take it on. That's going to be very different for everyone else. But let's just say that's everything. You walk away with $294 a month. Times that by 12. That's $3,528. Divide that by your original investment of $100,000. You're getting a less than 4% rate of return. Your money will do better in a savings account. To be honest, you can easily do probably 3, 4, or 5% in a savings account right now. But after all is said and done, you're making 3.53%. Can I show you a better way? Yeah, everyone just nod your head and say, yes, please, show me a better way. I've came across, now, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Mike. I've helped my clients pay off 8 figures of debt. I help them invest and build wealth. Our goal is to have our clients become millionaires within a decade. And that's doing it really conservatively, a conservative millionaire within a decade. Some will do it way faster than that. Some will do it within a couple of years. Some will take, a decade to get there. So we've helped people really transform their lives when it comes to money here. And there's this one strategy that I've been using on my account. It works really well in a bull market. It works in a sideways market. It works and also in a bear market. It can work as well. And the problem with investing this day and age is most people have been trained to believe that you can only make money if investments are going in one direction, and that's up and to the right? And that's your old school, that's your 401k, work pension, if you work with a financial advisor, that's how you're going to make money. But the truth is you can make money doing different things. And so one of the strategies I have, I call it my passive income strategy. It takes me 15 minutes per week to do this. Okay, and I'm going to pull up my calculator. I'm going to walk you through essentially what we're doing here. Now let's use the same example as the example I just used, $100,000. Actually, that was used in both examples. So let's just use $100,000 in this example. Let's just say you had $100,000. Okay, maybe you leverage it off your house, a line of credit. Maybe you've got it saved already and it's in a savings account. But let's take $100,000 here. Now, what's cool about this strategy here is we can get roughly about 3.3 leverage, which is more like having $330,000 to work. Okay, doesn't mean you have to use it, none of that stuff here, but you do have access to that. Now, what I do, guys, is I sell a lot of puts or sell calls, dual wheel strategy. And what I like about this is it's pretty conservative, for a couple of reasons. Number one, your money actually doesn't go to buying anything. You don't buy stocks, mutual funds, you don't buy anything. It sits in an account. And what happens is you collect money on contract premiums. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole strategy and how it all works today, but essentially what you're doing, okay, you're entering into agreement with someone in the market saying, if a stock hits a certain price, I'll buy the stock off of you at that price. Okay. And because you're entering into a contract like that, they pay you what we call a contract premium. And that's how we're making our money, is contract premiums. If the stock doesn't hit the price we agreed to, I keep the contract premium. My money stays put in the account. And I do it again next week, the week after that, and I do that all year. 15 minutes per week. And let me show you the numbers here. I'll show you what we did this week for a couple of our clients. We went into Google. Okay, and we did the 190 Google puts, meaning Google has to hit below 190 for us to actually buy the share. Google is currently at 203 when I did this. Okay, and I was able to do every, basically the way it works is every 100 shares is one contract. So I was able to buy 17 contracts, and each contract was paying me about $30. So I was going to make basically $521 this week alone. Now, here's the cool part about that. In 1 week alone, I've already beaten out every single scenario every single housing scenario, every single scenario of you buying a house and collecting your money and, that passive income. In 1 week in the market, I've already made more money than your income property has made you after all your expenses and managing blah, 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 all that stuff. I've got very low fees, right? I pay $5 to get in to enter the trade. All right, so that's my fee to enter the trade, and then I got some taxes. Oh, we didn't even talk about taxes. You got to pay taxes on the rental property. Duh, not property taxes, taxes on the income you made. So on $3,500, which was our last example, depending on your tax rate, you're probably paying at least 10%, $350. If you're closer to 20, that's $700 as well. So you're actually like 3% after all your expenses. Ugh, that's not fun. So this example, the way it works is, yes, I still got to pay taxes at the end of the year, but the taxes I pay are different than the taxes you're going to pay. I pay capital gains taxes, which is one of the cheapest taxes you can pay, period. And I'll pay capital gains all day, every day compared to income tax and all the other taxes people pay. So let's just say 521. Let's just say we can average $500 per week. Every week's going to be a bit different. Some weeks we'll be able to do better. Like last week, we were able to do about 7, 8, 900. This week we're closer to 5-ish. And next week we'll, probably be 5 to 6. So let's just say we average $500 and we do that 52 times a year. That's $26,000 off of my $100,000 investment, which gives me, I know the math, but I'm just going to do it for you. It's 26% rate of return. I'm making 26% rate of return. It takes me 15 minutes once a week to put this on. Once you understand the strategy, it's actually really simple. So let me figure this out. 15 times 52. That's 780 hours divided by, 780 minutes divided by 60. That's 13 hours. $26,000 is what I made at the end of the year. Divide that by 13. I'm making $2,000 an hour. You tell me what side hustle, what full-time job pays you $2,000 an hour in this example? Zilcho. Maybe if you're a CEO, but then you got all the stress and blah, blah, blah. No thanks. 15 minutes, stress-free, passive income. This is what I'm talking about. Now, do you need $100,000 to do this? No. You can do it with 10. You can do it with 5. You can do it with 30, 40. I've got accounts at 30K. I've got accounts at 70K. I've got people looking, they were thinking about buying rental properties. I said, hey, why don't you come try this first? This might make you more money than that rental property. So they're able to put $100,000 towards this, right? And you saw my example there, $26,000. 26% rate of return. I tell most people expect a 15 to 20% rate of return. Now, in this example, 26 is great. But I tell most people expect 15 to 20. So if you put in 10K, at the end of the year, you expect to be up 20%, which, by the way, does better than most financial advisors do with having to leverage your whole account. And again, like I said earlier, the cool part is none of this money actually enters the market. It sits in a savings account collecting interest, making you passive income. So this is what I would do before I ever consider buying another rental property, especially right now. Now, things could change, and who knows where we're going to be in 5-10 years from now. But right now, the rental market, in my opinion, is overpriced, too expensive, too much stress, too much worry. This is way better. You can be in and out 15 minutes a week, and you could be making a great passive income.